Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 805. This is the episode for Monday, June 21st, 2021, but we're actually recording the show on Wednesday, June the 16th. It's a Wednesday night special. We love Wednesday night specials. And you know the deal. Typically, when we do a Wednesday night special, that means somebody's on vacation, like me next week. So that's the deal. So let me get all the embed codes going here, and we'll get this thing going. We're going to start at 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern this evening, and probably have a pretty thin crew tonight, but that's okay. The people that need to be here will be here. All right, so the embed code is up, and let's get everybody invited. It's been kind of a tough day today. Like I say, this has just not been a good week. So these are the glasses I typically wear. Do you see something missing here? Yeah. It just, one side just gave up the ghost today. So wearing these standby, always have standby glasses. And we had the funeral of Christopher Sine today, our news anchor that passed away suddenly this past Saturday. And that was a pretty tough one. But again, it was great to see so many people from television and sports and all coming together to honor his life. And I had the honor of delivering a eulogy for Chris at that service. And it was great to see, of course, his wife, Laura, the three kids were there. And it's just a tough time. It has just been a really, really, really tough time for all of us here. And I do want to thank the other local stations. I think that's kind of cool. So our people could attend his funeral today. The other stations, WIAT, WBRC, and WVTM, covered news for us. And that's just really classy. I mean, that's what it's all about. So thanks to them for that. And we did not do a midday newscast today. We did not do a 4 o'clock p.m. newscast today, again, to allow as many of our people as possible to go to attend the funeral. But that was tough. It's been I'll shoot straight with you. It's been a tough week. And in addition to that, this is a big week. I do children's ministry at a church here. This is VBS week, and typically it's the busiest week of the year, even without all these other things happening. So it's been a challenging week, but we are going to get through this. And my voice is about at 63% capacity tonight. And if I can hold out 2 more days, I will make it.
You've made it your 6 months, and you need your 6-month retread, huh?
Yeah, I got to get get that retread going here. But yeah, with the VBS thing at church, we are screaming in there. I mean, we are just screaming, and it starts Sunday night and it goes every day through Friday, and that's a 3-hour thing every morning. And that in itself, you can lose your voice very easily over that. And then I've had some other things I've had to do with Chris's situation. So, but I'll take 63%. That's good. I just got to hang in there for 2 more days after tonight. We're going to make it. We are going to make it. So it's all good. All right.
As soon as you leave, a tropical storm comes.
Yeah, that's we're supposed to. I think we're leaving Sunday morning, and we're going to have a little 40th anniversary trip. We have been married 40 years. And
awesome.
That's hard to imagine, Jen.
I know.
Have a little getaway. And then what's funny, we're going to New England, and then we come back, and then I'm going to hop on another plane with one of the boys. We're going right back up to Boston to catch the Yankees, who are in town to play the Red Sox at Fenway. So for all my friends in Boston, fair warning, I'll be troublemaking your city all week.
Oh,
Go Reds.
Reds. I have been to Paul Brown Stadium so many times to watch a Bengals game, but I have never been across the street to watch a Reds baseball game, which makes no sense, none
I've been
whatsoever.
once, and it was a
slightly
fun
more
experience.
exciting.
Yeah.
I will say that they've got the greatest nachos and cheese in sports at Paul Brown Stadium. I mean, it is just really good. I don't know. So there's something about it. It's good.
And
Aaron,
the
I guess
Skyline
you,
chili.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Ooh,
what I was
yeah.
gonna
Aaron,
say.
Aaron, you hear us okay, right?
Yeah, I hear you great. You hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Awesome.
Are you chasing tonight, Aaron?
No, I'm actually finally on a break for a while. I got back from Montana and North Dakota a few days ago, and I've just been kind of hiking around the mountains and chilling out for a little bit before hurricane season.
I bet
Cool.
you had
Well,
a
let's
few
get-
pretty pictures from the last few days of storms up there.
All right,
man.
don't tell. No. Wait, we got to get this thing started now. Come on now. We don't want to get the good stuff before we
Don't want to
start
waste any
here.
good stuff. That's right.
That's
You
true.
got it. He's got some good stuff to
Exactly.
tell you too.
All right. So recorders are going, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by the great folks at Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
All right. Weather Brains, episode number 805. This is for June 21st, 2021. Let's see. We got to be at the solstice here. And look, let's just be honest. We're transparent on the show. We're doing recording the show on Wednesday, June the 16th. It will be released to the world, the podcast world, on June 21st. When is the summer solstice? Jen, you know everything. You're smart.
I think it's the 20th. I think it's the 20th at night, though, like 11 or so Eastern, I think.
So by the time people hear this produced podcast, it will officially be summer.
Mhm. It will be.
Yeah,
I'm
10:31
typing-
Central Time on Sunday night.
Oh, I was
10:31
right.
Central
You were right,
Time,
yeah.
Sunday, June
right.
20th. Okay. So Jen, thanks for joining us on a Wednesday night special. How are you
You
doing
bet.
this evening? You always are a ray of sunshine on this show. You have
Aw, thank you.
you bring common sense and order to a chaotic panel sometimes.
I do my darndest. I'm doing great. We always like to do our dew point checks. And so I know this is, in the future, but just so you know what was going on today in Ohio, 39 dew point today.
No
It's
way.
happening right
No
now. Yeah, it's gorgeous today. Got
Wow.
outside a little bit. It's been great. And a little severe weather threat coming up for me in a couple of days, and it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, I'm doing great. Been busy. Tornado Talk's doing awesome. And we just worked our booties off on a huge summary that we just were able to release. And that's my pick of the week. So I'll talk about that later. But just been doing my thing.
But plug Tornado Talk. So how do you become a patron of the site? Because you do such great work. Explain kind of how that whole thing
Thank
works
you.
now.
We have a membership on the website. And if you go to tornadotalk.com, there's a whole membership section that kind of talks to you about how you sign up. You can sign up for a monthly or a yearly membership. And there are some perks that come with it. A lot of our summaries are behind the paywall, some of the newer ones that are coming out, but we still have 500 summaries out there that are free. But a lot of the new ones that we're producing, and a lot of it's been the super outbreak focused, we are premium summaries, and then we'll release a few that are free. And so, $2.95 per month is our lowest tier. So less than a cup of coffee per day is how much, just to support what we do. And it's to help really support the website, because the more that we do in the writing, like the current summary is for the Barnesville, Georgia tornado from April 28th, over 10,000 words. We did a Grammarly check. That's how many words in that thing. So it's like a little ebook, over 130 pictures, I think. And so with more pictures you use, it really weighs down your website. So it helps us to keep our bandwidth up and be able to produce these big summaries and do the research and tell the stories. I have two amazing writers that spend hours doing mapping and churning out the information. And this one was really special to put together, and all of them have been. So that's how you can do it. It's go to tornadotalk.com and help just support what we do. And we have about 70 members so far. And we do special Zoom talks. So we have a Discord server where we can talk to folks and all that fun stuff. So thank you for
and let's
letting me
clarify
talk
that.
about
That's $2.95, not $295 a month.
That would be correct.
Yes, that's right.
$2.95.
Yeah, that is the bargain of a lifetime. So Tornado Talk, go do it now. So Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest. Let's get right to it.
I never get to chat with you, because you chat with everybody else and then you just go, Bill Murray, bring in our guest. And I can't bring in our guest tonight because he's not my guest. He's his guest. So, so chat with me.
Well, okay. Well, let's ask Bill. Bill, what'd you have for lunch today? What we used to do with JB was ask JB what he had for lunch for all those years. What did you have for lunch today?
What I had for dinner was the treat.
Well, what did you have for dinner?
Chicken kebab, tabbouleh salad, hummus, pita, grilled vegetables. You would have been proud of me, James.
So ask me what I had for dinner.
I bet you had, let's see, let me guess what you had for dinner. It was probably a Pop-Tart or a lemon cookie or something crazy. There we go.
Crackers.
Not bad. Lisa, what were those things JB used to eat that we always, flat dinner. He called them a flat dinner. So yeah, when you get off the TV at 6:30 and you go to WeatherBrains at 7, you just grab a couple of goldfish and keep going. So that's it. But we realized tonight that having the show at 7:00 takes out all the parents from the show, the parents with small children.
That's right.
Which means that immediately takes out Nate and that takes out Kim as they try and get their kids in bed by 8 Central. So hopefully they'll join us later if possible. But Bill, let's mention our dew point. Now we can't compete with a 39 dew point. I mean, come on.
No, but I'll take a 55. You got a 55.
Yeah, Birmingham right now. Yeah, Birmingham's 57. Maxwell Air Force Base is showing a dew point of 51 down in Montgomery. So
can that be right? Wow.
No, that doesn't make any sense. They're on the river down there.
So why is Bessemer at 64 if Shelby County Airport's at 55?
So many of these, why does
transpiration or something?
I don't know. I just don't know if it's accurate. I question some of the accuracy of the data. I'll put it that way. The one that really bugs me is the one in Jasper, Alabama. That site up there, it always reads like 8 degrees too high on a hot day, like a bank temperature sign or something. But anyway, we'll take it.
My Tempest says the dew point is 61 here, so it's been pretty good. So, well, thanks for chatting.
So anyway, we'll talk. We'll talk tropical. How's your Peloton back there, Bill?
Well, it ain't got any uses. I broke my toe 3 weeks ago, so I'm about to be healed and hopefully cleared by the doctors tomorrow. So
okay, I think you need to do a video. We need a video of you on that thing with some scantily clad lady in that little monitor. Hello, big boy. You can go faster.
Okay, Bill, this is what we get when we bring you into and have a chit chat with you.
Sorry.
No, see, I took this whole thing right down the tubes in 2 minutes. So Jen, let's bring in Aaron before he hangs up and runs.
Exactly. Well, Bill asked me, he goes, well, who should we have on for the Wednesday night special? And I'm like, I know, Aaron Rigsby. So I wrote him a quick note.
Immediate response.
Yeah, exactly. Because I love this guy. I got a chance to meet him a couple of years ago at the Indiana Chaser Con, and follow him on Twitter and Facebook and all of his chasing endeavors. And I've been watching his life story kind of unfold in front of our eyes here. And he's got a great story. So I'm excited to have him on. And from his Twitter, it's his Twitter line there to describe himself. He's storm chaser, photographer, hiking addict, rock climber, Ohio to Colorado. Aaron Rigsby, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And you wrote to me a little earlier and you said, is it okay if I go live from my car? Because that's where I'm living right now. And I'm like, well, you can come live wherever you want to. That's awesome. So officially your car is your home. So let's start there. What's going on?
Yeah. I always joke around with people when I do these podcasts. I'm like, are you really interviewing Aaron Rigsby if he's not in his car in a parking lot somewhere? So it's usually how it goes. But yeah, basically, so I moved to Colorado a couple years ago, back in February of 2019. I was kind of in this like weird middle ground because I'm 27 years old now. So at the time I was 25, and I was kind of in that like phase where I was like, well, maybe I kind of want to start like getting my own place, you know, settle down, at least have like a home base somewhere, and then I can chase storms, you know, locally and be a little closer to the action. But basically, like 4 or 5 months into that, I was gone so much that I just hated having an apartment because I was just paying a bunch of money. Because I mean, it's Colorado; it's not exactly cheap to live out here, and I was just paying a bunch of money for a place that I was at like maybe 2 weeks out of the month because I was so busy chasing or hiking or, you know, exploring the outdoors. So when my lease was up in February of 2020, I sold pretty much all of the stuff in my room, all of my furniture, and then I built a bed in the back of my Subaru Forester, and I've been doing the whole like nomadic van life thing out of the back. It's kind of the best of both worlds. So I get to do my freelance, and I get to explore around the country, and I pretty much get to live everyone's dream that's, you know, wanted to do the van life, but they can't figure out how to make money on the road, which has been great.
Are you cool. Like Francis McDormand and you work at Amazon in the off season?
Is that what you do? I kid you not. Last year I worked at a warehouse in the off season, and I lived on my car. We were working so many hours, and people were joking around. They were like, "I'm just gonna start sleeping in the parking lot since we've been working so much." And I'm just like, I already do that.
So you were the inspiration for the movie, maybe, Aaron.
I guess so. Yeah, it'd be nice if I could get some of the endorsements from it, but you know, we'll work on that.
You got that right. So do you just find do you go to like a campground, or what do you do?
So the beautiful thing about Colorado is they actually, in all of the national forest areas, it's all free camping, and they have a bunch of stuff out here called BLM land, which is basically just big areas of camping with no amenities. But it's just, you know, they have a ton of camp spots that you can camp at for free up to 2 weeks at a time, and then you can just move to the next spot a little bit further down. And then when I'm on the road out in Oklahoma, Kansas, and, you know, all those other places chasing, I usually just do like hotel parking lots, Walmart, you know, little stuff like that. It's like everyone thinks it's sketchy, but like I've never been bothered. Half the time I'm so tired anyway that if someone broke in my car, I'd be like, you just have my stuff. I don't even care. Just let me sleep.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's cool. I think that's neat. So yeah, you're living
the
dream.
So are all the national parks just covered up, Aaron? Are they just full of people this year like I hear they are?
Yeah, I try and avoid the national parks personally, or go in there like towards sunset and after dark to kind of do my exploring, because like I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love seeing people get out and explore and like and enjoy the outdoors, but it's just overcrowded for me. And when I'm in like traffic in a place that I go to like escape people, it's kind of a buzzkill. I'll stick to my like national forest areas where I can camp and, you know, do my thing and not have a, you know, 5 o'clock traffic going through.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, so you're out exploring, but let's start where did you come from here? And so I found out that you actually are from West Central Ohio, which is where I'm living right now, which is awesome. And so take us back, early years as a kid. What were your interests? Have you always had a weather bug? And just what's some of your educational background? So take us to the beginning here.
So yeah, and this will be a little bit of a long story. I'll try and shorten up as much as I can.
Go.
But so basically,
we love a good long story. Just take your time.
Awesome. Perfect.
We got till 10 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, awesome. No problem.
Perfect. So yeah, basically I grew up like any other ordinary kid, you know, small town Ohio. You know, I didn't have too many interests. You know, growing up, I'd ride my bike, you know, hang out with a couple of my friends that I had growing up, and you know, pretty much went to school not knowing, you know, what to really do with my life at the time. And around 2010, I started getting really big into photography and kind of started to enter the photography world. And growing up, you know, in school, I wasn't exactly the popular kid. You know, I was very socially awkward. You know, I only had a couple friends that I'd hang out with, and I definitely got bullied a lot growing up through school. So it was kind of hard to really focus on my passion when you were kind of worried about going to school every day about, you know, what people would think of you. But it ended up working out because in 2010, I started to take pictures, and I got one of my first little digital cameras. It was just like a little point and shoot camera. And I started taking landscape pictures, and I knew it was something that I liked. But I wanted to start kind of branching off. Growing up, I was always absolutely terrified of storms. My parents would always joke around about my grandma and I, which one would be ducking under the couch first when the thunder started to roll. But I realized now that there was always an interest in weather, but it was kind of overshadowed by this fear, because growing up, I would get books on like flooding, lightning, any kind of storms that I could think of. And I'd always be watching the news. I'd always be watching like the Weather Channel's Local on the 8s and stuff like that, and like what the local forecast was. But I was just so scared of them that it never crossed my mind that there might actually be a passion there. And in 2010, I actually had my learner's permit. So I was 15 and a half years old in Ohio. And I started to take lightning pictures. I kind of started to scratch the surface of, my comfort zone, and started to take lightning pictures. And at the time, all I had was my learner's permit. So my parents would sometimes have to come out with me in the middle of the night and, start taking, or be out there with me taking lightning pictures, which is really cool because, when your kid comes to you in the middle of the night, I mean, most parents would probably want to sleep. And, my mom especially was fortunate enough to take me out sometimes at 8, 9 o'clock at night. And so I could get these pictures. And on June 5th, 2010, a small tornado actually hit my hometown of Marysville, Ohio, or I guess most of my hometown. I grew up in Milford Center, but Marysville's only 5 minutes away. And a small tornado hit there. And when I saw that damage firsthand, it just ignited a spark that, it's kind of hard to describe. And my passion just kind of rolled from there. I realized that I wanted to start chasing tornadoes. I wanted to branch outside of these lightning pictures. And in 2011, I'll never forget this either. I started out with my iPod Touch because it was 2011, and I had the AccuWeather app, and I would just refresh it every day looking for when it would say severe. At the time, I didn't even know what the Storm Prediction Center site was, that there was outlooks every day. And every time it would say severe, I would get all excited, and I'd have my camera ready for, if local storms kind of started to blow through. And on May 25th, 2011, I thought I was a hot shot. I chased Indiana for the first time. I was out of state. I was like, man, I'm a real deal chaser now. I crossed the state border. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. And, I actually ended up getting in a tornado warned a storm, and got a tornado that unfortunately hit Greensburg, Indiana. And then in 2012, I took my first trip out to Tornado Alley, a place that I swore as a kid I would never go. I remember having this conversation with my dad. I was like, I'm never going to Tornado Alley. I'm absolutely not, no matter what. I'm not even going to drive through it. I don't want to take the chance of even getting hit by a storm. And it's funny, though, looking back on it, because my sister, I don't know why I remember this, but when I was like 8 or 9 years old, my sister told me, she's like, one day you're going to be a weatherman. And I looked at her like she was crazy. And here I am in 2012, driving to Tornado Alley willingly with my first, kind of introduction to the chaser community. Because again, at the time, I didn't know that there was hundreds and thousands of chasers that, pursue these storms. I thought I was the only weirdo from Ohio. And I found a couple friends, that were local to Ohio to go chasing with. And we actually saw our first few tornadoes. We got one near Cooperton, Oklahoma. We chased the April 14th, 2012 high risk outbreak. And then we got a couple more storms after that before we went back. And in 2013 is when I started to take, my yearly chasecation. We'd go out there for like a week and a half at a time, because I was working at a movie theater for $7 an hour, and I could only take so much time off, and I only had so much money to work with. But then in 2014, I kind of was getting to the point where I took a couple, like I would take like a few day trips out to the plains. I didn't really have to rely on my chasecation, but I almost got like tired of relying on that week, and I really just hated missing stuff. Like whenever storms would happen and I'd miss tornadoes or really cool storms, I'd get so like just frustrated, because I'm like, man, I want to be there, but I can't because I'm working. And actually, ironically enough, today, the 7-year anniversary is kind of what put my name on the map, essentially into the chaser world, which was the Pilger, Nebraska twin EF4 tornadoes. And growing up, I always said that if I could go back and chase one day, it would be the Palm Sunday outbreak, where it's the iconic picture of the two big tornadoes side by side in Indiana. And when that happened, I got to live that. Like that was literally happening in front of me. And you even hear in our video, we're like, it's Palm Sunday. I can't believe it. Like as these like just two big tornadoes are going across this landscape. But the real turning point was the picture that I captured. I captured a picture of two storm chasers like in my foreground, and then two big wedge tornadoes in the background, just churning across the Nebraska landscape. And then that's when everybody was just like, who the heck is this Aaron guy? Like what, like, where did he come from? And then, my passion just continued to roll from there. It was after that event where I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something with the weather. I wanted to keep chasing storms. And I was one of the few that just didn't just chase tornadoes. All the weather interests me: flooding, wildfires, snow, hurricanes. And in 2000, pretty much 2015 to 18, it was just kind of, I was still working at my normal job, and, I'd get out when I could, but there was always, I wanted to be doing more with it. And in 2016, I actually took this severe weather season off, and I was laying in my room one day, and this is after I went through my whole big weight loss journey. I'd hiked Mount Katahdin. I had lost, 60 to 70 pounds, and I was falling in love with hiking as much as I love chasing. And it's cool because the two go hand in hand, because this hike that I'm about to talk about would completely change my mentality, completely change my outlook on life, and just prove to myself that I could do anything that I set my mind to. And in 2016 or 2015, I guess, I was laying in my bed one day and I was like, I've done some cool stuff, but I feel like I could be doing more. Like, I wanted to try something that would really push me further and harder than I ever thought possible. And I had never been on a backpacking trip. And originally I was going to do the Appalachian Trail. And then I messaged one of my friends that I had known a couple times, but I just saw him get back from a backpacking trip. And I was like, hey man, you like hiking? I like hiking. Do you want to do this crazy long hike with me? And he's like, yeah, but we should do the PCT. It's way more pretty. And it's out in California. It goes from Mexico to Canada, and it goes through California, Oregon, and Washington. So I took the 2016 season off, and I ended up hiking 1,000 miles of it I lived out of a 50-pound pack across the deserts of California, through the Sierra Nevadas, the entire Sierra Nevada range. And I lived out of a backpack for 2.5 months, hitchhiking, pretty much doing everything that your parents taught you not to do, getting rides from strangers, not showering for days at a time, pretty much living the bare minimum lifestyle. And it was the closest thing to world peace I think that I could possibly have, because there's people from all over the world that were you're all out there suffering. You're all out there with the same goal. And it was at that time I realized that not everyone was mean, and I wasn't as weird as I thought I was, because in school I was so scared to talk about what I liked, or crack jokes and like try and fit in with people. I tried everything and it just never works. And I got to know, these hikers and these people that were just like me. That I had tossed around the idea of the van life for a while leading up to that. And then I was talking to people on the PCT that were actually doing it. And I was like, wow, like, cool. There's other people like me. And I basically took that mentality and rolled with it. And in 2018, I was working at a warehouse at the time, and I caught myself one day, and I didn't hate the job, but I didn't necessarily like it because it was just a lot of work. And, I didn't have near the flexibility I did at the movie theater, but I needed to make more money because I'm getting a little older now. And it's just the facts of life. You have a little bit more bills. So I needed to be making a little bit more money. And I caught myself one day and I said that, yeah, the money's great, but I don't really like the job. And it had essentially gone against everything that I had, built my entire life around of until this point. And so I sat down, did some reflecting, and I had, within the last couple of years, joined a company called Livestorms Media. And good friend of mine, Brett, he was nice enough to take me in, and he started to market my videos. And at the time, it's cool when you're making a little bit of money off of doing something that you love. It's not something that is making you rich, but it's you're making a little bit of side income off of something you love doing. And I was like, well, how far could I take this? And this is where the PCT mentality came into play. And I told myself, I was like, well, if I can hike 1,000 miles across California with a backpack, with no backpacking experience, and basically just figuring it out as I go, then I can do this. You can do anything that you set your mind to if you put in the effort and the work. And so I started to save a cushion, and I paid off a lot of my debts that I had. And I was messaging my friend, my very good friend, Brandon, and he does very well for himself in the video world. And he has been a very successful videographer. And I kind of just asked him the basic ropes. I was like, hey man, we've known each other for a couple of years, and I'm just wondering, I want to pursue this full time, and I'm just not exactly sure how to do it, because I shot video every once in a while, but it wasn't on the caliber that I think I can make a living off of. And he was nice enough to kind of take me under his wing and, you know, show me the tips and tricks on, you know, to be successful with this. And so I saved up a cushion, and I remember this like it was yesterday because I was shaking when I put in my 2-week notice at work. I was so scared because I was such a good worker there and they loved me there. And I was like going from financial stability to the unknown, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And when I put in my 2-week notice, they told me that, you know, we were proud to have you as a worker here. You've been a great worker to us, and you always have a place here if you need it. And like, for your sake, I hope we don't see you again. But, you know, if you need a job or something, then you always have a place here. And that was kind of refreshing, just to know that if I, you know, didn't work out, I'd still have a backup plan. And every day leading up to my last day at work, I would watch an inspirational video just to remind myself that, like, you can do it. Like, it's going to be okay. You can do it. And it was bit, and there was one quote in the video that I watched that, you know, it kind of stayed with me throughout my entire career. And it was, if you kind of want something, then you're only going to kind of get it. You have to grab it with everything that you got and put all of your effort into it and run with it. And that's what I did. And it was started off with slow, because 2018 was a really slow year for severe weather. There wasn't much going on, but then Hurricane Michael happened. And Hurricane Michael would hands down be the pivoting moment in my freelance career. And I got down there a couple of days early. And then when the hurricane hit, I shot the now iconic video that's been everywhere, and every documentary possible, every national news outlet. And from my parking garage, there was an entire roof that lifted off of a house mid-hurricane and then just got dropped on the other side of the road. And then the whole second story from a house across the street completely got obliterated right in front of me. And thankfully, there was nobody home, so nobody was hurt. And they had thankfully evacuated. But that would be the pivoting moment in my freelancing career, when, you know, it was kind of like the Pilger event, where the chaser community was like, who the heck is this guy? And the media world would be like, who the heck is this guy? Like, and I remember this, I was watching the Weather Channel, and it's so cool because, you know, growing up, I would watch people like James, I would watch the Weather Channel, I would watch, you know, storm riders and storm chasers. And when you start to become, you know, noticed by these people, it's the coolest feeling in the world, because it feels like your work is starting to pay off. And yeah, and basically Jim Cantori was like doing his live broadcast, and he was just like, look at this video, this is Storm Chaser Aaron Rigsby. And he's like, look at there goes a roof, whole roof, just like that, gone, bam. And then he, like, it continues on, and he's like, and there goes another one, and like, he's like, this is in the western eye wall, like this is even the worst of it. And it was just so cool to have that video and see someone that you look up to so much be so excited and like recognize who you are. And then in 2019 was when I moved to Colorado, and things started to get really tough in the freelance world, where it was like, you know, I was in Colorado now, I was paying rent, I was paying all these extra bills, and making a living off of it and turning a profit was a lot harder, especially with it was an okay severe weather season, but it still wasn't like super active. And in 2020, I basically just like hit an all-time low, and I had just completely flopped with the freelance. And I was just like, well, this is it, game over. Like, I tried, and, you know, it is what it is. But the cool thing is that, you know, I just refused to give up on something that I care so much about, because quitting is easy. But, you know, pursuing a dream, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. So I moved back to Ohio for a little bit. I worked in a warehouse, and I just saved up double what I did the first time. And I just did a factory reset. I was just like, you know, this is a place that I can go to. I've got to put in the effort to do it. And then I'm going to try again, because, you know, you see instances of people, even like Oprah and Steven Spielberg, and you notice a trend with all these people. They hit hard times before they hit success. You know, Oprah was denied from TV. They said she wasn't good enough. Steven Spielberg was rejected from film school. And you start to reflect on these things, and you're like, okay, well, you know, even the highest struggled to get to where they are, but through hard work and persistence, they were able to have some success. And in 2020, you know, I was working really hard. I was working a lot of overtime. In my free days, I was working freelance, covering the snowstorms up in the Northeast. And I was like getting ahead of myself. I was getting a huge cushion put back, and I was ready to hit the road, maybe even a little bit early. But then disaster struck. I had a huge car malfunction, and it took all of that, almost nearly all of what I had saved to fix it. And it was just the most soul crushing thing to ever happen. And it felt like I was like at the time, it was just like, well, maybe I should take this as a sign to just not even try, man. Like maybe I should just go after financial comfort, settle down, and just call it a day. But me being me, I'm a Rigsby, and I don't know how to take no for an answer. So I was just like, I told myself, I was like, you know what? Me being mad about this isn't going to fix anything. It's not going to make my car better. It's not going to put money in my bank account. It's like, all I got to do is I got to work hard. And if I want to hit my goal by the time I want to, I just got to put in the effort and I got to stay focused. And that's exactly what I did. And I actually saved a little bit more than what I had intended with my cushion to go at it, full time again. I was ready. I put in my 2-week notice again, and I hit the road. And right out of the gate, I had the best start to a year that I had ever had, with, the snowstorms in the Northeast. And then I started to get consistent, day rates with some news stations, which is really cool because it's really hard to do that. And you have some sorts of like guaranteed income there. So but it comes full circle though, because, through all of these trials and, tribulations, people say that you inspire them, and they look at your story and they look up to you and you're like, you inspired me to do this, you inspired me to do that, or you're such an inspiration. But it comes full circle, because without those messages and people reaching out, it doesn't motivate me to keep being, better and trying. Because when you have an audience looking at you and you have people looking up to you, it motivates you to keep going stronger and harder than ever before. You're like, you inspired these people, you can't give up on them. And I think that's just the coolest feeling in the world throughout all of this. And to add it, to top everything off, last year I completed one of my biggest goals that I never thought I would ever achieve. And in Colorado, there are 58 14,000 foot mountains. And I hiked my 58th one last summer. In just 2 summers, I completed it. And it was, and we're talking like some real deal climbs, like some, like, if you fall, you're dead kind of climbs. And the hiking mentality to the chasing mentality, it goes so far hand in hand, because again, that's one of those moments that, like, when you start feeling down on yourself, you just reflect and you have to look back at how far you've come sometimes, because it's easy to get lost when you don't see the results that you want right away. And leading up to when I kind of had to swallow my pride and go back to Ohio and work for a little bit, I still had that to look back on and be like, that took you 2 summers, but that took every ounce of willpower and strength and discipline to get you to that point. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at right now with my freelance, because I've had a lot of success this year. I feel like I finally know how to shoot, and I feel like I'm climbing to the top of that last peak. And the fact of life is that it's never going to get easier. You're going to have your high moments, you're going to have your low moments, and it's a matter of how you deal with those cards that are laid out on the table in front of you. If you choose to kind of accept defeat and take the easy way out and just kind of and just completely forget about your dreams, then what did you do spending that time and effort leading up to that, and all those people that you inspired? You just got to figure out what didn't work the first time and try again. And like Thomas Edison said, he didn't fail 1,000 times when he was trying to make a light bulb. He just figured out 1,000 different ways it didn't work, and he finally figured it out. And making a living off of chasing in the chasing world is quote unquote impossible. And that word doesn't fly with me. I don't think that many things are impossible to us. I think that we're capable of a lot more. We just don't really take the time to either, notice our passion or chase after it. And I'm in a situation, and granted, it's not as easy for some. I'm in a unique situation where I found my passion early and I chose to run with it. But I also don't have, a girlfriend, a family, and stuff like that that's holding me back. I chose to spend my, early to mid 20s pursuing my dreams and just exploring this beautiful world. And I get to meet so many incredible people along the way. And it's just cool hearing everyone's different stories, because you can have something in common with the person across from me at the table. And all it starts with is just a simple hi, like, hey, how's it going? And I've met so many cool people that way, and they get inspired by hearing my story, which is great.
I think your story is amazing, Aaron, and I'm just in awe of what you've said tonight. Our backgrounds are sort of similar in that, my grandmother was my inspiration because she was frightened of storms. So I grew up scared of storms too. And it took till the night of April 3rd, 1974 for me to get over that fear. But the way you've done it is even more amazing. I even worked in a movie theater. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the Weather Channel was a huge influence. We needed to have Cantori on here tonight, James, to have him see Aaron's imitation of him. It was pretty good there for a minute.
Oh, not bad, not bad at all.
I wanted to. We got a lot to unpack here because you've given us a tremendous amount of incredible information there. And I don't know where to start. I guess I'll start with Michael, and then Jen's going to take a turn, and James can jump in wherever he wants. But talk about that day, because that had to be petrifying to be where you were. Were you ever worried for your safety, or tell us how you tracked that storm and how you got where you were that day?
Also, disclaimer, I'm sorry if I look a little sweaty. It is really hot in Colorado today, and my AC is like hit or miss, so my window is down. So I apologize. It's not a nervous sweat. It's 95 degrees still at 6:30. So in case y'all are wondering why I'm red and sweaty, that's why.
At least you're not at Death Valley where it's 125 today. So that's something good to look for.
Yeah, right. It would be so bad. But anyway, now that I got that out of the way, so I can get those nerds out of the way. Yeah. So basically, Hurricane Michael. So leading up to that is actually kind of a funny story. So I actually had a vacation planned with some friends down in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and we were getting a cabin for the week. And at the time, Hurricane Michael wasn't supposed to be much of anything. It was supposed to be tropical storm, maybe a Category 1 hurricane. And I was like, I'm not canceling my trip for that. Like, I've already paid my way. I've already got these plans. We're already heading down there. It's going to be fine. Well, Michael had another say about that, because every night leading up to my trip, the models just kept upticking and upticking and upticking in intensity. And I'm like, okay, starting to get a little nervous, but I still don't think it's going to be much. And then they upgraded Michael to a Category 2 at landfall. And I was like, God, crap. And this was like literally the first night that we got down to Tennessee. And I asked my friend, like awkwardly the following morning, I was like, so how mad would you be if I had to leave a little early to go chasing? And they're like, well, how early? I'm like 3 hours from now. And they were just like, well, I'm not gonna be mad. Like, I'll be disappointed because we don't get to hang out with you. But he's like, I'm not gonna be mad. And I was like, great, because
they didn't want to go either, huh?
No. They were the same ones. They wanted to enjoy their vacation. Me, I'm like, well, I can't miss out on this. This is going to be a daytime landfall, like daytime landfalling hurricane. It seems to be rare these days. And, I cracked a joke before I left there. I'm like, it's a really good thing I'm not like on my honeymoon or something, because I'd probably be divorced already before it even happened. So, but, weather doesn't wait, man. Like, it's part of the sacrifices when you want to pursue this full time. You just got to accept it. I always give a disclaimer, like, I'll go, but just know there's always the possibility that I have to leave. And so I drove down there. And I remember that night, I just had a gut feeling that this was going to play out a little bit like Harvey the year prior. And because it was unfolding almost exactly the same way. It wasn't stationary. It wasn't, staying in one spot, but just the overall environment and the way it was behaving, the way the models were upticking leading up to landfall. I was like, man, like I have a feeling this might have potential to be a major landfall. And when I got down to Florida a couple of days early, I arrived and it was a total ghost town. And I was, you always have the stress of scoping out the Gulf Coast, because there's a big process that you have to do when chasing hurricanes. You got to scope out a location. You got to find a place that you think is going to be suitable enough to ride out the hurricane. And you have to track it for at least 30 miles along the Gulf Coast, because you just have to assume that the hurricane is going to, wobble a little bit left or right. But ironically enough, so that year, I didn't have as much hurricane experience as I do now. I had Hurricane Harvey under my belt, and I had Hurricane Florence. Both were relatively obvious areas to go. It's kind of just go here and record the mayhem. Well, this one was my first one that was actually moving and wobbling back.
I see Jen's head moving, but I don't see Aaron's head moving, so I'm afraid he's frozen.
That might be the call.
I think he ran out of battery.
That
was a lot to unpack in that.
We'll end with it. We know it's wobbling. That's where we're at with the Michael story. So hopefully he can get back here, man.
That's really a very inspiring story. And James, I know you were listening to that intently as he shared that, because I know there are lots and lots of kids out there that feel just like he does. Millions of kids that can identify with that, and how to pick them out of a crowd, James. When you're doing your school talks.
It's so refreshing. Aaron was talking about, when he was in, school, he was socially awkward. And I was really like that too. It seems like so many people that get into this just, didn't have a lot of friends, and they were kind of, I was like a social zero, and you're withdrawn, and you don't know how to interact with people that well, and you can't really communicate your passions. And it just sounds like everything's falling into place for Aaron. And it's been, it's all about the journey. And it just seems like he embraces the journey. Every journey's got bumps and hard times and pitfalls, but you just embrace it, and you move on. And that's what he's done. So it's pretty cool to hear his story. Well, hopefully he'll be back on here in a few minutes. I see he dropped off. So hopefully the heat wave he's underneath that, massive upper high. That thing's like a 6,000 meter, 500 millibar upper high that's over them out there. I mean, it is just nasty, brutal, sizzling frying pan heat. So
yeah, what have your forecasts been for Arizona this week? Have they been pretty crazy? Because even Flagstaff's pretty hot, isn't
it? I'm not on in Arizona anymore.
Oh, you're not doing Arizona anymore. Darn. That's too
bad. No.
I forgot about that.
I bet you Jen is. Jen, are you on the air in Arizona anyway?
I am actually, yeah, at a couple of places. It's excessive heat, 115. I'm in Safford. I think they've been peaking, close to 112, 115, and then Page as well. Lake Powell area, they've been 106, 107 for the highs. So, I mean, they're all under the excessive heat warnings. It's been awful. So it's not no break, really. It may be a little bit of a break early next week, but really no break. And obviously, a rogue storm, that's about it coming in. So
while we're waiting on Aaron to get back, we've got Tony and his astronomy report. So let's break for Tony's report. We'll come back and talk about
out of the way.
Yeah, right. The tropical system, and do some business here. So we will be right back as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
During a recent meeting of the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Natural Resources, a committee member had some questions for U.S. Forest Service Associate Deputy Chief Jennifer Eberling that both raised some eyebrows and some ridicule across social media. Quote, "We know there's been significant solar flare activity, and so is there anything that the National Forest Service or Bureau of Land Management can do to change the course of the moon's orbit or the Earth's orbit around the sun? Obviously, that would have profound effects on our climate," unquote. Now, the congressman went on to explain that his understanding of all of this was based on conversations with former NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, who had described slight changes in the orbit of the moon and Earth around the sun. Now, the level of understanding that the congressman has on orbital mechanics or their impact on climate change isn't clear. He may have been being sarcastic. That's for people far more versed in political science to determine. But what impact changes in the sun, as well as the orbit of the Earth and moon, have on climate? Well, that's a surface we can scratch here. Yes, changes in the sun, particularly in the frequency and magnitude of coronal mass ejections, can impact our climate. And yes, the orbit of the moon and sun do naturally change, which also has a measurable climate impact. However, these impacts are felt on scales measured in hundreds of thousands of years, not the 100 or so years of the current unprecedented warming trend that's being discussed. The solar changes the representative was likely referring to are part of the solar cycle. And that's measured in changes in the number of sunspots and therefore the number of solar flares over an 11-year cycle. Problem with this as an explanation for global average temperatures that have continued to increase over the last half decade is that solar activity was decreasing during that time, leading up to a solar minimum last year. Changes in Earth's orbit are likely referencing the Milankovitch cycles. And those are changes in the tilt that produces the seasons, the shape of Earth's orbit from nearly circular to more elliptical, and the wobble in the way that the axis is pointed. Each of these changes impact how much sunlight reaches Earth and therefore impact climate. But those changes are also incredibly gradual and measured over tens of thousands of years. So, also not a great explanation for the significant rise in global temperatures, which far better align with the beginning of the industrial age. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
Thank you, Tony. And look who's back. He's back.
Sorry about that technical issue. My Wi-Fi just randomly went out. I'm like, okay.
We thought either A, you just got mad at us and hung up on us, which people often do, or you had a power, brownout or something out there with all that heat. I mean,
that's the more likely scenario.
He used to be you used to be in the parking lot of the Days Inn, and the owner would look up and see you stealing his Wi-Fi and pull the plug on you.
I wouldn't put it past me. I used to have to use McDonald's Wi-Fi all the time.
All right, so we were talking about Michael wobbling. That's where we left off. So pick it right back up.
So yeah, basically, Hurricane Michael kept wobbling back and forth, and pretty much the only place that I hadn't scouted was Mexico Beach, and it's probably better that way, so I didn't get myself into a sketchy situation. And I ended up finding a parking garage in Panama City Beach, Florida, which is around the area that I thought was going to be landfall. I figured it was maybe going to be a touch east and I could adjust if need be, which it ended up working out anyway, because literally the night before landfall, we had the owner of whatever place that we were at come out and tell us that we couldn't be there filming. And we were like, being in this business, I know how to talk to people now. So it's like, I don't lose my cool. I don't be like, what are you talking about? You can't tell me to leave, blah, 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 blah. So, I was having a nice conversation with him. I was like, hey, I'm with media. I'm with so-and-so. It's like, we're not doing anything. We actually had a local say that we could ride it out in their condo. And he just wasn't having it. He was like, absolutely not. You're not, no filming at all. That's straight from the boss. And I was like, what do you want me to do, man? Like, there's a major hurricane just off of the coast. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. I was like, I'm going to film. And so I ended up leaving. And, at this point, my anxiety is through the roof because I'm like, oh God, now I got to I had my spot secure. Now I got to go find something else. And I go about 10 miles down the road, and that's where I found the next parking garage, which is where I would film my iconic clip, which again, everything happens for a reason because not much happened at the place that I was at before. Mm-hmm. And I, instead this time I was just like, I'm not taking any chances. I am laying my seat back. I am staying in my car until landfall. So no one can see where I'm at. And no one can see that there's a chaser here. So, I lean back and then, you get a little bit of sleep. Like you have so many butterflies the night before because you've seen how many people are staying back. You've seen how many, you're seeing people along the beach still with their families, and you don't know what you're going to see the next morning. Meanwhile, Hurricane Michael just continues to plummet with pressure off of the coast. It just kept it seemed like every other airplane that flew through it, it just kept plummeting down. And we're just like, how strong is this freaking thing going to get? And we thought it didn't get any crazier than Hurricane Harvey, which was a low end category 4 at landfall. And the next morning it was around 9 a.m. and Michael was just off the coast. We could see the waves starting to get a little rough. And the recon data came in and it was just insane. Right before landfall, I was just standing there. I was just like, I'm going to be okay. Right. And I called my parents and I was just like, I'm okay, but I just need you to know this is what's happening. I might not have service for a while. I'm probably okay, but this is where I am and I love you guys. And, I hung up the phone and then I started to film. And I think it got down to 930 millibars is what I think the last update I saw was before I started filming. And my friend Gabe Cox was actually there. And I looked at him and I was just like, dude, this is uncharted territory because, after the post data, it had been since 1992 since we had a hurricane, category 5 hurricane make landfall anywhere in this area. And it went from 0 to 100 like a flip of a light switch. It started off with just kind of casual gusts, and then you start to see little pieces of debris start flying off of roofs, like some shingles, nothing major, but you could notice an uptick in the winds. And then when that inner core moved on shore, that's when crap just hit the fan. That's when the roof started to come off. It looked like something that you see out of a scientific film where it almost looked like they had a test house there and they had a jet engine up to it and just kept ripping piece by piece off, just chunks of this house going into the ocean, flying across the street, flying everywhere before the whole thing eventually caved. And same with the house across the street. And you're filming this and it's terrifying because I don't know if there could be a family hunkered down in there for all I know, fighting for their life. And, it's one of those things where there's a common misconception between chasers and residents, where some people think that we're just there for an adrenaline rush, film damage, go home, when that's not the case. But if these things are going to happen, me being there isn't going to make it more intense. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And I want to be there to document it at its most vicious, And I want the story to be told because this is an historic event. These are stories that need told, and this is stuff that needs filmed. And I do believe that sometimes when some of this really dramatic video comes out, it can be used in studies to better build homes and uptick those building codes, which they just aren't up to standard a lot of the time. And when I captured this clip, I knew what I had just captured, and I appear way more calm in my video than what I actually am. Like, I was inside, I was screaming, just like, oh my gosh, like, are you kidding me? But like in my video, I'm just silent. I think I blurred out a quick holy crap, and that was it, because I knew what I just shot. And just before cell towers went down, when I missed the eye wall by like 2 or 3 miles, like the eye of the hurricane, and that's okay. I still had a little bit of cell service. I uploaded the video as quick as I could, and it just went absolutely bonkers. It was everywhere. And everyone was just like, Aaron Rigsby, Aaron Rigsby, Aaron Rigsby. When you're someone like me, when you're in that kind of spotlight, it's kind of like shell shocking at first, because, you know, in 2011, growing up in school, nobody notices you. Like, I use this loosely, but you're like a nobody. Like, you know, no one knows who you are. No one cares who you are. And then when you're just like, all of the news stations are like, Aaron Rigsby, Aaron Rigsby, Aaron Rigsby, and then everyone's sharing your content, you're just like, whoa, like, this is crazy. Like, I've never had this experience before. But then things started to shift the more that I, you know, spent along the coast, because, you know, one thing in this career is that when these storms affect people, you almost have a sense of guilt when you go back home. You know, you're witnessing people lose everything that they own, everything that they've, you know, ever dreamed of. And I go back home to my bed, and it just sits really wrong for a long time, because you want to help everybody, but you know that you can't. But I did find that the best way to help as many people as you can is to help keep them in the spotlight, because it's really easy for disasters to get buried in old news. And I spent, you know, 4 or 5 days after Hurricane Michael in Mexico Beach and Panama City with a couple of my colleagues, shooting interviews with people and getting their stories and letting people know that there's still people suffering here. Even if you don't hear about it on the news as much right now, people are still suffering. They need your help. And people see this stuff, and then more and more donations pour in. And a lot of these smaller towns too, a little further inland, that kind of got overshadowed, get a little more help that they need too. So that was like, it's kind of the best of both worlds, because you see disasters and you see nature at its worst, but you also see nature bring out the best in people. And it kind of goes back again to where the world isn't as bad as, you know, sometimes it's made out to be. People want to care, and people do care, especially in the face of disaster. When their friends and neighbors need help, they're going to be there to assist when it's needed, even if they just lost everything. And some of the stories that I heard from people, you know, I had to step away for a couple of minutes because I shed a couple tears, because you could just feel the pain in those people's souls. And that was like my first time really experiencing that. And it just further ignited my passion to keep chasing these storms and keep telling these stories and keep these people, you know, kind of in the spotlight. And to witness that was very, very humbling.
Wow. I think that what you're capturing there in terms of, you know, the aftermath and trying to focus on the people's stories, I mean, that inspires me, because that's what we try to do with Tornado Talk. Because it's one thing to analyze the damage and say, okay, it hit this house and it went this way or whatever. But that was somebody's house. That was somebody's roof that flew off, or somebody's car that was turned over. And so it's trying to tell those stories and the impacts. And the whole goal is, you know, if people can see that, then maybe they can, if somebody else had that, a tornado hit their house, and they can, you know, they know they're not the only one. And it's just highlighting some of these communities that a lot of people don't know about. And how can we learn then from what happened, you know, in the future? And I think it really brings what you're talking about, the humanity, that folks do love each other. They do want to serve each other. They do want to help. I want to jump back into tornado land. And I'm going to see if James will let me share my screen at some point, because I want to pull something up here in just a minute. But let's talk about the Pilger anniversary, June 16th, 2014. What was it like? What is it like to chase tornadoes like that? I've never seen a tornado ever. You know, I do tornado history, but I would love to see one. I mean, I would like to go, you come to Ohio again, I would chase him with you.
I was going to say, we'll have to change that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to go chasing with you. But what is it like? I mean, just what was it like to go through that experience?
I tell you what, it was a wild roller coaster of emotions from start to finish. That's for sure. You know, a lot of times when you see tornadoes, they don't affect communities. A lot of them stay over rural areas and they don't affect much, and you can celebrate. And you're like, oh my gosh, we finally did it, because, you know, it's what, at the end of the day, it's what you're out there to do. But then there's certain days, because if you think about it, towns are such a small target for tornadoes to hit. You know, tornadoes only take up a very small area, and typically they're only on the ground for a couple minutes. And on rare occasions, you do get the Pilger, Nebraska tornadoes that are long track cyclic supercells, and your chance of hitting a town are a little bit higher, which unfortunately happened on the day of June 16th, 2014. And I will never forget this day, the day I die, because that was the first year I started to learn how to forecast. And even for a newbie like me, there was one of those rare days where you got to the target area and you knew you were going to see tornadoes later that day. I will never forget, we were driving through Iowa, and you know, it was kind of high cirrus rain, typically not stuff that you'd want to see in your target area or near your target area on the day of a chase day. A lot of times that's how the atmosphere doesn't destabilize. And, you know, you typically don't see tornadoes, which is good news for folks, bad news for chasers. But I'll never forget when we cleared that line of rain, we got near Sioux City, Iowa, and we cleared that rain, and it was just like a flip of a light switch. It was blue skies. You had moisture just racing in from the south. And it's what we call the rare tornado sky. It's a sky you see in the morning when you know that crap's about to go down. And we were sitting at a Perkins eating breakfast, and every morning, every NWS office launches a 12Z weather balloon, which is, for those that don't know Zulu time, it's the morning weather balloon where they can see what's going on in real time. It's real-time data that's going on in the atmosphere. When they released the morning sounding from that weather balloon, if there was ever a tornado put on a piece of paper, it was that day. It was that morning. I had never in my life, still to this day, never seen a morning sounding so picture perfect for tornado genesis in my entire life. Basically, every parameter that you needed for tornadoes was maximized times 2. But the only thing was, there was a big question mark. And this is what, you know, plays a big key in meteorology. And this is why it's really hard for people that want to come chasing to kind of make that commitment on what days look good and what days look bad, because a day can look really good and it can be totally ruined because there's no forcing or there's too strong of a cap, which is what we thought might happen on June 16th. But those morning storms actually laid out what we call an outflow boundary, which is essentially just a train track, and it has a little bit of an enhanced level of vorticity, and it can provide forcing for storms to fire. And where that outflow boundary ended up, ended up near the triple point, which is basically where 3 different areas of meteorology meet, and then that's typically where you get a storm to fire. So when this outflow boundary happened, when you threw that into the equation, it provided enough convergence to pop off one storm and take advantage of that insane environment. And if that outflow boundary wasn't there, that day probably wouldn't have happened, because it probably just would have been a cap bust, or maybe something a lot further west near like Burwell on the dry line. And when that storm first went up, when that PDS watch, which is a rare, particularly dangerous situation tornado watch, James Spann is no stranger to this. With being in Alabama, they get a couple a year sometimes. And the whole vibe in the car is just different. You're excited, but you're also nervous for people's safety, because when you get a PDS watch, that's the real deal. That means you're dealing with a very violent environment. And when that storm went off, it looked like a nuke was dropped on Nebraska. And when we first pulled up on the storm, we're like, oh, it's probably got like an hour before it does anything. And like not even 10 minutes later, first tornado on the ground. And we're like, okay. So we like start to move a little bit closer. And then that's when it eventually turned into the first monster Stanton, Nebraska tornado. And I'm still convinced that the Stanton, Nebraska tornado, which is the one before Pilger, was the strongest tornado of that family that day. That was one I could literally feel the ground beneath me rumbling when we stopped to get video. And it just made this god awful noise. It was just like it was eating the earth. And when we lost that tornado, we turned east and we popped out of the rain to the next cycle. And that's when the first Pilger, Nebraska tornado touched down. And this would be the one that would enter Pilger and completely devastate the town. And I'll never forget what color that tornado turned. This is something that video never does justice. The video only captures the tornado. The video doesn't capture the entire sky above you spinning. It doesn't put that into perspective, because the tornado is very violent. It's a very compact area. But what people don't see and what they are so mesmerized the first time they see their tornado is the entire sky, the entire mesocyclone just spinning above you. And then you see all these chaotic little vortices dancing up because there's so much vorticity in the atmosphere. And as we got closer to Pilger, we didn't know that there was a town there first. And I'll never forget, the tornado went from this like light brown color from where it was sucking up the dirt in the Nebraska landscape, and it just turned black. And then all of a sudden you start seeing huge pieces of debris fly in the air. The whole tornado just turns blacker than my car. And you just see so much debris flying through the sky. And this is when you're like, oh no, this is not good. This is not what we want to see. And it spared no mercy on Pilger. It literally it cut right up Main Street. It went through the centermost part of town. No mercy at almost its most violent stage. The only thing that I can say that Pilger got lucky with was that the tornado wasn't as wide when it exited town. It could have been, I think it wiped 90% of the town. It could have been 100, and it could have been a little more intense. But, you know, emergency responders were already there. They were outside of town. It actually hit the fire station. They had to move the fire trucks out of the way of the tornado so they could get back in there and do search and rescue. There's nothing we could do at that point except continue the chase. It's more beneficial for us to keep tracking these tornadoes and keep reporting what we're seeing. And then that's when Palm Sunday happened. There was the two tornadoes, both widened to 1/4 mile wide, EF4 tornadoes. And this is when they were at their most violent stage. And it is something that I can only compare to like the Northern Lights, the solar eclipse. It's something that is so terrifying, but so beautiful and so humbling that your brain can't really describe what you're actually looking at. You can't process what's actually going on. But in my mind too, I'm like, this is history. This is what's going to be in the kind of books that I read in school. And I need to do my best to kind of put all these thoughts behind me, and I need to capture this moment. And then that's when I captured my really famous picture of the two tornadoes and the two cars in front of me. And I didn't know it at the time, but that picture would single-handedly kind of put my work out there and be my most published picture to the date. You know, it's been in, it's been the Weather Guide calendar. It's going to be on the cover of the new Significant Tornadoes books that's going to be out next year. And it just went absolutely everywhere.
That's what I wanted to share, actually. Let's talk about that for just a minute.
Heck yeah.
Right here, and Significant Tornadoes, Thomas Grzulis. I think everybody who ever loved tornado history wants these books to come out now. But yeah, you're on volume 2. How did that come about? Did you talk to him? Did he reach out to you, and how that all happened?
So actually, this was like years down the road. I think it was in 2017. I got an email, and he found my picture on Flickr, actually. And he reached out to me about wanting to use it on the front of the Significant Tornadoes book, which of course I accepted. And, you know, I did all the paperwork and all the other fun stuff. But when I realized the other pictures that were on there and the fact that I got to share a cover with a picture of Tim Samaras, that made that moment that much more special, because, you know, he's such a legend. And to be on a book with such a legend like that, to capture an image that's worthy of that, it's the best feeling in the entire world, especially as a freelance photographer. And it's one of those things that you look back on and you can't believe that that's your picture. You know, it gets going straight back to the childhood. Like, no one knows who you are. I'm just a small town Ohio nerd that likes weather. And then now your stuff's getting published all over the world. Now it's on a book. It just makes you feel like your work is finally paying off, even if it's just little things at a time here and there. It doesn't all have to come at once. It's just little things over the years, and you just got to keep plucking away at it until you finally, get the big one. And this is one of the big ones.
Yeah. This is amazing. On his Tornado Project website, Grzulis mentioned the cover of Volume 2 has photographs that are more personal. The upper photo is Aaron Rigsby's shot of the twin F4 tornadoes near Pilger, Nebraska on June 16th, 2014. The two tornadoes crossed paths. Many old newspapers told of tornadoes on the plains with huge multiple funnels and complex movements. It was impossible to draw the path properly. So, I mean, you captured it. And, for him, I mean, he's documented every tornado that he could ever imagine. You brought history into the present with your photo. It really is Palm Sunday. And so I think that's amazing that you were able to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And it's one of those things, it's like you look back on, it's like there's gonna be some kid that sees that picture in a book and like, that could be the future Aaron Rigsby. You never know. Like the next generation of storm chasers are going to see that. And that's what I tell people. It's like, I love seeing these storms and I love seeing tornadoes, but to be able to be a part of history and continue to document these historic events and have your stuff shown is the absolute best feeling in the entire world. It just makes the grind so worth it.
So Aaron, talk for a minute about your favorite equipment, what you like to use, what gets you out there for anybody who wants to kind of learn along here, because it was always important to me before I chased for my first time to learn what other chasers were doing, and it was really helpful.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that I'll start off a little bit with like kind of how to get into weather, and then I'll talk about my favorite gear. Essentially, the best thing you can do is either find people that are local to you to take a chase trip with that are a little more experienced and just kind of ride along. It's okay to do that. You don't have to be intimidated by other, chasers if you don't know as much as them. Most chasers are more than willing to help out and offer advice. The second thing is there's different websites. There's Twister Data, weather.cod.edu, and Pivotal Weather. All of these things are the access to all these weather models that we look at to kind of predict these severe storms. And then there's also YouTube videos available by Rich Thompson, who's the lead Storm Prediction Center meteorologist, and he issues all the outlooks. He's the top dog at the SPC. And he has intros to weather forecasting, which are fantastic. I even watched those today, and I've been doing this 10 years, and I still learn something new every single time. That's the beauty of weather. You never know everything. And just when you think you know something, throws your curveball, and you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So that's a great way to start and get into this and kind of learn the basics so you don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. I did it. Many of my friends did it. My chase partner, I do a lot of more solo stuff now, but when I do chase with my partner, Stephen Jones, he taught me literally everything I know about forecasting up until I started to branch off on my own. And it's been great. And that was just by me getting to know people. And, we hit off a friendship, and now we've been best friends for 7-8 years. And then my favorite gear that I like to use is, obviously, I'm a little biased, my DSLR, my Canon 60. I'm a Canon boy still. I haven't jumped onto the Nikon train just yet because it's treating me really well. And then for my video cameras, I use my Sony. Before I used 1080 and now I use 4K. So I used a Sony AX100 for my dash camera. I basically just let that one roll the entire time with a really big SD card. And it can work really good for time lapses or capturing those rogue lightning bolts or those rogue moments you don't really expect, like hail busting your windshield, like mine currently is right now. And I use a Sony AX700 for my handheld. So that's the one where, like, as my dash camera's rolling when I park and I start, getting those zoom shots and stuff like that I upload. So I use a variety of angles to really capture every single moment of the chase as best as I can.
Yeah,
I got a question.
Really awesome. Yeah, James, go ahead.
So how do you get along with other chasers? There's some remarkable work done in the chaser community, and I hear varying stories of the camaraderie or conflict. But what's it like? You're out there on one storm and you've got chaser convergence. Do you guys get along? Big hugs, fist fights break out? What happens?
Honestly, it's given the day, sometimes all the above. It's like kind of like the Jonas fights. They just like flip off a hat or something. People don't get along, but most of the time it's just a lot of like online talk. And you'll get that in any community. I'm really into the hiker world, and it's the same thing. You'll have some keyboard warriors that'll say stuff online that'll never say to your face, kind of try and talk down on you. The biggest thing I've noticed is that the more well-known you become, the more you become a target for people. And I use this word loosely because I don't want people to think that, like, oh, well, they're just jealous of me because I do this full time, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of it does boil down to that. If you can't chase as much as you'd like, you're not going to like seeing other people chase and succeed and see more than you do. It's just in human nature. So me personally, I get along with everybody, or at least try to. I'm not perfect. Some people don't like me. Other people, I don't really get along with as well either. But, out in the field, I'm so focused on the chase, especially since I do this full time now, that I kind of just park in a field and then wait for storms to fire. And like, if a group of chasers show up, I'll shake hands, or, even if you can not like somebody at all, but once you see like a tornado in an open field, the most epic, experience ever as a chaser with it not hitting anything, you'll give anybody a hug. You could give your worst enemy a hug. You'll jump up to him and be like, I love you, bro. We did it. Let's go. That's why we chase right there. That's how you chase. And it just kind of brings everyone back to like level-headedness. And honestly, a lot of the drama just happens in the off season when everyone's bored. I'm fortunate enough to where I have other hobbies outside of chasing where I keep myself busy year round. You know, I snowboard, I rock climb, I hike. I don't have time for a lot of the drama these days. But you know, you get it anywhere you go. So overall, I would say the weather community is actually really good. If you need help, it's the same thing. People will come out there and help you. There's been times where, you know, they'll post an SOS where people are stuck in the mud, and someone will immediately be out there in like 5 minutes to help pull you out. Or if you have like a question about, you know, the day and the weather, the people will be more than willing to help out. So overall, it's really good. I've never really had a negative experience, at least in person. Online is a little bit different story, but whatever, it's online.
Oh yeah, you deal with the same trolls we do: trolls, haters, and know-it-alls.
Yes.
You know, sometimes the know-it-alls drive me really crazy. The trolls I can live with, and the haters I can live with that. But these know-it-alls, gosh, they know more than you or anybody else. And you're a moron, and I know everything. And so they drive me crazy. But one more thing, and I've got a gazillion questions, but I'll let Jen and Bill ask some. Tell me about the monetization process, because I hear this over and over and over from people like you that love weather and they want to do this for a living. They want to be a storm chaser as their occupation. You know, talk about the monetization and the road to being successful where you can do that for a living.
Yeah, so it's you've got to have a lot of self-discipline, because when you do go at this full time, you're your own boss, and it's very easy to not work for a long time. You keep just sitting out all these setups and then you don't end up making money. 2, you got to know how to shoot, because when I'm at these events, you got to put yourself in the editor's seat. Like if I'm an editor at a news station, what do I want to see? How do I want the story to be told? And you kind of have to think of these little things when you want to do this full time. And you've got to not just like chasing tornadoes, because tornadoes are a very small portion of the monetization process, you know, because unfortunately, and I hate to say it, unless tornadoes are in fact impacting communities, they're not a big story as much as we love the ones that are in the fields, which honestly, I'm okay with not documenting that kind of stuff. It's not my scene. I'll, deal with my flooding and the hurricanes. But, the biggest thing is that you got to be persistent. You gotta not be afraid of denial, because when I'm sending out emails to work with people, or I think is a really cool shot, and then someone gets a better shot than me, and then they choose their shot over mine, it's really easy to get discouraged. And you can't let that affect your mentality, because you see time and time again, I'll try and help people out that want to storm chase full time as their occupation, and they try it for a year, they don't see the results that they want, and then they just like give up or just go back to the chasecation. And you got to be willing to, because for every 10 no's that you get, the one yes is all that you need. And you got to find different ways to kind of separate yourself. Funny enough, I'm not even really as known for my weather footage as I am for my somehow being able to be everywhere at one time. It's not uncommon for me to grind, be in, Kansas one day and then end up on the Gulf Coast for a hurricane or something. And people are just like, how? And, unfortunately, injecting caffeine into your system over and over again to get to these events is part of the process. So what it takes, because weather does not wait up on you at all. So you got to take a variety of these things into consideration. And the biggest thing is just, you got to not be afraid to get denied. And you got to channel the discouragement and flip it around into seeing what you could do differently. And then once you do something differently for the next event, go back and watch it. Even if you're satisfied, don't be satisfied. Go back, watch your video, see what you can shoot differently and how you can change it up a little bit. That's what I do every single time I shoot something. I always go back and I'm like, okay, I could do this differently. I could do this shot differently. I could frame this differently. And then I use that for the next event, and then rinse and repeat. That way you don't ever get too comfortable with what you're shooting. You're like, okay, that's okay. But if, say you wait there for another 10 minutes and then you get that one great shot to finish in your package and then you're good to go. And then it was worth the wait. So you got to find that fine balance between the two. But honestly, it's a lot of, it's a lot of stress. Everyone thinks it's super easy. Like, oh man, you just go there and shoot video and you make money. That's great. I'm like, God, I wish it was that easy.
So Aaron, I wanted to reflect on what you said and agree with you about going out with someone who knows what they're doing. In the beginning, I went with Gene Roden, and we were super successful on 2 different days, and I'll always treasure those days. But James, you know who I called? You know, because Aaron was talking about his response when he saw those, big tornadoes out there. You know who I called when I saw those incredible 5 tornadoes at once in Harper County, Kansas, back in 2004.
It's called JB.
That's who I called. JB had always wanted to see a tornado, so I guess I'll call you next time I get to do that, Jim.
Please,
I'll call you and rub it in. But yeah, it was so funny. It sounded like a waterfall to me. The one that was closest to me. I don't know if you've experienced that same thing, but the sound to me was like that of a waterfall,
100%.
As opposed to the rumbling train.
Yeah, I don't know where this train thing came from people, but it does not sound anything like a train. I tell people this. If you put the most violent tornadoes I've seen, the loudest ones I've heard, if you put a jet engine next to Niagara Falls, that's what a tornado sounds like. We went to Niagara Falls with my friends, and I told them, I was like, "You hear that?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's exactly what a tornado sounds like, to a T."
Yeah, that was my experience too. That was just amazing. Now, you spent some time in the northern plains and northern Rockies the last few weeks, and there have been some amazing pictures that have come out of there. Stuff Reed Timmer I saw on Twitter, some other things, but some beautiful just stacks of plates, way up into the atmosphere. Talk about chasing up there this time of year versus, southern plains in May. Is the convergence not as bad as it, or is it getting worse? What's the status of that?
So I'm going to start this off with saying that the Southern Plains is the most overrated place to chase in the entire freaking world. I'm not afraid to say that. Oklahoma, I hate chasing Oklahoma. It's crowded, it's hilly, it's trees, and the place that doesn't have trees and stuff, there's no roads. So I'm a snob when it comes to the Southern Plains. I'll chase it, but I won't like it. And everyone's like, "Oh, Oklahoma's super flat, isn't it?" I'm like, no, it's really not. There's mountains in Oklahoma. There's the Wichitas. There's the not the Adirondacks. That's in New York. But the Arbuckles, east of I-35.
Yeah, right.
It is not flat at all. So I don't like chasing the Southern Plains. I'll do it because there's a lot of tornadoes, but I don't enjoy it nearly as much. The Northern Plains are where it is freaking at, man. I will take June chasing. I will take a few days in June over an entire month of May, any day of the week. And you'll get varying opinions on that. But my results have shown every single June, man. The Northern Plains are where it's at. Your storms are prettier. Your tornadoes are prettier. Your tornadoes are typically taller because the temperature dew spreads are, a little bit further apart. And usually in June, there's so much instability to work with, or when you get those just fat monsters that are super slow moving in areas that you can actually get roads to. And they're so gorgeous. And time again, we get for that. The last few Junes have been pretty slow, which has been a little discouraging. And ironically enough, the best tornado I saw in 2019 was in September in Wyoming. But there's this common misconception that chase season's over. And I'm just thinking to myself, confused. I'm like, maybe for the chase cationers, but I was just like, it's June. You got June, there's epic tornadoes in July. August, there can be good tornadoes. In September, there's plenty of tornadoes. I saw 6 in Wyoming, including a fat wedge in 2019. Then you have the fall season. So tornado season is never really over to me. It slows down, but there's still tornadoes. You just gotta, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But that stretch in June that we just had is the exact reminder of why you got to chase everything. And I'm not saying you have to go from Texas to Montana, back to Texas, back up to Montana for every little 2%. But over the years, you start to recognize, little features that you might have missed before, and an epic storm happens and it looks pretty similar. Or you're already in the area. And a prime example of this is the Malta, Montana mothership that I just got. I didn't even want to chase that day because I was so tired. I had just driven from Oklahoma all the way to North Dakota, busted the day before. I got into some baseball size hail sporadically the day before, and I just wasn't feeling it. I was like, I don't want to drive 4 more hours out of my way and then drive 6 hours back for the following day. But, this is, again, kind of full circle with the hiking thing. I had to discipline myself. And I told myself, just go. You're going to regret it if something happens and you're not there. Just go the extra 4 hours west and you're just try. And I'm so glad I did, because that storm, the forecast was just nailed, because the higher probability of severe weather is actually in the mountains of Montana, closer to Great Falls. And I was like, well, I'm not chasing the mountains. I don't care how good it looks. And I'm like, I'm not going to go clear to Great Falls when there's a pseudo warm front up here, because you could see on surface obs that there was some kind of front there. And I thought that was going to be the focal point for storms. And it took forever for the cams to pick up on it, but they finally did. And man, I tell you, that was a day where no matter how slow and frustrating a severe weather year is, reminds you why you chase. Because I watched that storm from birth to death. And when I first saw it, I thought I was going to produce a tornado right in front of me, but it ended up cycling becoming HP. And as I repositioned, just every time I pulled over, it was just more and more mind blowing. It just kept getting sculpted and sculpted and sculpted, pancake after pancake after pancake. And it was moving so slow, but it was like super stressful because it was in Montana and there's no roads in Montana. And it just kept drifting closer and closer to the highway. And then it was going to go into no man's land. So it was like, when it's almost at peak structure, I was taking pictures and like the sun was casting on it. It looked like an alien mothership was about to abduct us. And I was like, I am not losing this storm without a fight. So I like gunned it northeast and I found this little road. There was one little road that went south and then it went east. And it was the only play that we had where we had to go like 2 hours out of our way to reposition. I was like, I am not giving up the storm without a fight with this structure. So I like turned down this road and I can see ruts from where if it gets muddy, then I'm going to be stuck. And so the whole time I'm just like white knuckle driving and I keep like looking out of the corner of my eye and I could just see the core getting closer and closer. And I'm just racing down this mud road, trying to beat this rain. And I was like, am I being stupid? There's no one around me. There's no one around me. Am I being stupid? And then I pulled over and that's when I just saw that the right side of the jaw dropping structure appeared. And I was just like, I jumped in my car and I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And like, I don't get excited about structure a lot because I've just seen so much to this point. But my gosh, man, the colors, the structure of that. And I thought I was about to produce a tornado and I would have shaved my head and retired and called it a day if that would have just produced a tornado right there, because it's not going to get better than that. But it ended up not producing, but it was still okay with the structure. I'm snapping pictures away and then I flip a U-turn to come back to the main road because I didn't want to push my luck too much. But then I see like 2 headlights come this way and it's my best friend, Steven. He's in another car. He's like, what's wrong? Is the road end? I was like, no, I was just afraid I wasn't going to beat it. And I don't know if there's cell service. And I don't want to get stuck. And then we agreed to just go together. Like, okay, well, if we're stuck, we get stuck, we're out here together. We're not by ourselves. So we're like gunning down this road again the whole time. I'm like staring at this. I'm like trying to beat this core, getting closer and closer. We're just like grazing this. And we ended up beating it. And we were the only chasers that took that road in time. So the pictures that we got, and in this day and age, is very hard to do. We had the only pictures of that structure that in existence. And it's crazy to say that because there's so many chasers out these days. And it was such a marginal day. Most of the chasers sat out that day and they were getting ready for Thursday, which was going to be a big day in North Dakota. And there was only, I think I saw maybe 6 other cars that day. And none of them were able to take that mud road because I have a Forester and my friend has a Jeep. So we had all-wheel drive and the drive back was sketch, but we did make it through the sloppy roads, but we definitely wouldn't have made it if we would have gotten at the peak of that storm. And to capture a moment like that, that's never going to happen again. And when you chase for 10 years and you say that that's the best structure that you've seen, that's saying something. But the coolest part of it was when I posted those pictures, they went absolutely bonkers on social media. The video, the pictures, more so than any tornado video or pictures I posted all year within the last 3 years, went absolutely ballistic. And it was just so cool because you were just getting shares from all these huge pages on Instagram, which sounds like super basic to say, but it, like when you're a freelancer like me trying to build up your branding, build all these followers to eventually do like sponsorships, eventually it's great. And you just see all these people come to your page and like, this is my new favorite page. This is the most incredible picture I've ever seen. This is absolutely insane. You're killing it, dude. All those like compliments are just like, that's why you grind. That's why you don't like sleep more than a few hours at a time. That's why you keep grinding. That's why you storm chase. And it's just stuff like that can lift your spirits so much higher than what they were before. And it's just the best feeling in the freaking world next to capturing a historic moment like Hurricane Michael or Harvey.
So are you a proponent of, is it a Subaru Forester? Is that what I need to get next?
That's what I have.
Yeah, that sounds like, because I've always been scared of those mud roads like that. And you've inspired me to take on some of those at some point soon here. Yeah, that's an amazing story, and everything you talk about is amazing. And I did love all of your pictures from your recent chases. And I think I want to switch for a second back to the Pacific Coast Trail. Aaron, because that to me is another one of those just bucket list things, maybe even more than the Appalachian Trail. And one of my friends at Hilton had done the entire PCT over 2 years. But when the book The Wild came out and the movie with Reese Witherspoon, did you see that before you actually did your journey?
I did, and it like kind of slapped me into reality though, because the movie makes it look like it's really flat to start and just really hot in the desert, which sounds like the typical desert you'd have. And like, nah, like right from the get go, we're just going up and over these like deserty mountains. And I'm like, the movie made it look so flat. where's my flat areas?
Yeah, it's a really amazing book because she went in sort of very naively and paid a lot of price for that, but somehow lived to tell about it, and that was an amazing story. So that's pretty phenomenal. But so I wanted to ask you one other thing. You're talking about the kids, socially awkward, maybe don't feel like anybody's interested in what they're doing, and your story was very inspiring by itself. But what direct advice would you give some of those kids that are listening tonight? Because there's a bunch of them that are just like us, that feel that way.
The best advice that I give to anybody is that even the best battles are sometimes won with silence. And I didn't talk back to a lot of the bullies in school, and I kind of just took it, and I didn't know it at the time. But if I could go, like, I didn't know where I was going to be in 10 years after high school. If you would have told me, if me could go back and like talk to high school me sitting at a desk and be like, dude, you're about to do some really cool stuff. Just power through, give it time. You're about to show all of these people who's boss. And after high school, you can be whoever you want to be. You don't have to take the quote unquote, American dream path where you go to school, buy a house, work 9 to 5, have a bunch of kids, and then retire and bank on your retirement to travel. If you want to do something differently and your heart is telling you to do something differently than maybe what people are guiding you in the direction of, don't be afraid to take the path less traveled. It's a little more work to get there, but it's so much more rewarding. And, a lot of the stuff, and I tell people this because everything I've done has been self-taught and I've just done on my own through a lot of trial and error. And you can't be afraid to just try. I mean, I even battle with this myself sometimes where, you're so used to rejection and you're so used to getting told no, whether that be from bullies or just like people that don't believe in you necessarily. And it kind of affects your mentality. And all you got to do is try. I mean, that's what chasing was to me at first. I was like, oh, this sounds kind of cool. Maybe I'll try and get into this. And then, all it takes is a few emails to change your life. I've worked with news stations just by sending an email like, hey, this is what I have to offer. This is what I do. And yeah, you'll get a lot of no's. Sometimes you won't get a reply, but all it takes is that one to say yes and give you a chance. And I think the biggest thing too to remember, and this is something that I've gotten especially good about after the last few years, is to treat everyone, and it sounds so stereotypical, but treat everyone like how you'd want to be treated. When I went through in school, I don't want anyone to feel like how I did in school. So even if like these quote unquote like weird people that I come across, I still talk to them. Like when I worked normal jobs and there'd be like the introvert or the quiet person, I would make it a point to go talk to them because like it's a little shell shocking for them and you just peel them back a layer at a time. But when they have someone that like genuinely talks to them and is genuinely listening to them and genuinely interested in like who they are and what they're like, they don't feel so invisible anymore. And that's, I think me personally, all I wanted when I was growing up in school, like no one really took the time to figure out who I was. And a lot of these bullies, like later in life, they reach out to me now and think I'm like the coolest person in the world. And I'm very forgiving. I forgive, but I don't forget. Like all those memories are locked in there. It's like I could have been this person back in high school, but you never gave me the chance. But I'd also don't regret what I went through in school, because then I wouldn't have this opportunity and to inspire as many people as I have today and become the person who I am today. Because I just channeled all of that negativity and all those people that said I wouldn't amount to anything, and I just let it drive me. Like just keep fanning my fire. And then eventually you just kind of look past behind that and you start proving to yourself that you can do these things. And it just has a snowball effect. All it takes is one chance on yourself. And once you do it, once you like see what you accomplish and what you can do when you set your mind to something, it changes your whole look on everything. There's nothing you can't do, no matter how frustrating it is. It may not happen in the time frame that you want it to, but it will eventually, as long as you keep putting in 100% effort. And going back to that inspirational video that I watched that day, you can't kind of want something. You've got to want it with all of your heart. And I just want people that are like, you know, maybe getting bullied in school or think they're weird. After school, you realize how genuine people are. And a lot of those people are just kind of like self-conscious about something going on, whether it be in their personal life or at home. And that's okay. You know, if that's how they cope with it, that's okay. But it's just how you deal with that and how you choose to deal with that. And me, when I have crappy cards played in front of me, I try not to let the negativity win over, you know, because like I said, giving up is really easy. If you have the courage to pick yourself back up 100,000 times and keep powering through, then it's worth it. That's what separates you from the rest, you know, from everybody else. And, you know, all it took was a chance with me 3 years ago. And now I'm here. I get to talk to James Spann. I get to talk to you guys. You know, I've been on Weather Channel, like on their TV show, Deadline to Disaster, all these shows you watch, all the people that you saw like growing up in the weather community. Like I snowboard with Reed now. We're going hiking next week. Simon and Justin from Storm Riders. I'm good friends with them now. I still have my notes that I wrote down from Storm Riders. It's just the coolest feeling in the world. And, you know, it's been a remarkable journey after high school, man. I want people to see, because seeing is believing. I want people to see that you don't have to be somebody to be somebody. I grew up in a farm town, man, and now I'm just out here, and, you know, I feel blessed enough to be able to explore this beautiful country, be able to talk to people like you and inspire people along the way. And, you know, I feel like if you're living your whole life for yourself, then what's the point of living? Like, you just got to inspire as many people as you can. You know, it has a full circle. I inspire people inspire me, and then it all comes back around.
I'm overly inspired, and I told Bill a couple of days ago when I'm like, we got to talk to Aaron Risby. He's got the most inspiring stories, was the words I used. And then, you know, another yeah.
That's just Jen talk.
It. No, another area, and you've been very open about this on social media, and it's another area that truly has inspired me, and you alluded to it just briefly, is your weight loss journey. And I'd love for you to touch upon that. What drove you to start getting healthy, and how did you do it? How did you maintain it? And I know that has helped you to get to this point where you can go hiking and you can do the rock climbing and you can meet these amazing goals of doing these feats, but you had to get there. You had to do some work. And so there's a lot of us, including myself, who struggle with weight. You know, I love to eat.
Me too.
I'd rather eat, but I don't want to, you know, now I'm 48 years old. It's not, the weight doesn't go, but on my stomach, you know, so like it's inspiring to know that you saw something and you took it and you moved forward. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So it all started when I was 20 years old, and it was, again, 2014, same year as Pilger. I went to the doctor, and, you know, it was just a normal checkup, and, you know, they had been on me on my weight for years, but before you lose weight, you don't even know. I tell people this, you don't even really know that you're overweight. It doesn't, you never pay attention to it. It doesn't even cross your mind. You never really be like, oh, my pants are getting kind of tight. It just doesn't cross your mind. Well, I went to the doctor, and they told me that I had high blood pressure and I was at a very high risk for diabetes. And when you hear something like that at 20 years old, it really causes you to sit down and reflect on a few things. And me, I was like, man, I'm 20 years old. I don't need to be hearing this right now. I'm in a very early part of my life. And it basically, I just kind of sat there one day and I was just like, well, I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was time to make some changes. And at the time, and I think part of it too kind of went back to the bullying. It wasn't directly related to that, but I used to play video games all the time. I'd go home and I'd play video games all night, and I wouldn't do much because before I had my license, I would be out riding my bike and stuff. But, you know, when I got my license, I can drive everywhere now. And I kind of transitioned to video games because that was like my escape. It was kind of my escape world from all the mean and, you know, dark places out in the real world. I could just escape and I could be happy for a little bit. And with that came, I was drinking over 2 liters of soda a day. I was having so many late night snacks, candy, the whole shebang. And, you know, I went back home that night and I reflected on a few things. And I was like, well, I've always wanted to hike a mountain. Never thought I would or thought I'd know how to, but I was like, why not? And you know how I was mentioning earlier, all it takes is all you got to do is give it a chance. And that's what I did. And so I told myself, I was just like, I found Mount Katahdin up in Maine, and I was like, that one looks cool. I'm going to try that. And between February or roughly March of 2014, I wanted to do it at the end of July. And I was like, I'm going to get down to 200 pounds by July, no matter what it takes. And one of my best friends, Alec, he had just completed a big weight loss journey. And I reached out to him with the advice with the soda, because that was my biggest problem, was the sugary drinks. So bad, man. I was drinking over a 2-liter a day, and I worked at a movie theater where I got free soda all day. And it was just the hardest thing to break. And I told him, I was like, well, how do you do it, man? Like, I have all these headaches. I just feel awful. And he kept reassuring me. He's like, just keep at it, man. He's like, give it a month and you won't even think about it. And I was like, okay. And I kept at it, and I kept that willpower, and I went down to 1 soda a day, which was huge for me at the time, absolutely huge. And then I eventually quit cold turkey. And I think the best thing for me was working with it every day, because you had to like discipline yourself not to even look at it. It's like, no, I don't want it. I don't want it. And eventually I started just doing other little things, because people think that to lose weight, you got to just give up everything. That's not the case. If you give up everything cold turkey, you're doomed before you even start. You're going to relapse, and then you're going to gain weight even faster. It's small changes that add up to the biggest changes. Instead of deep frying my fries, I would bake my French fries. Instead of, a full frozen pizza, I'd eat half a frozen pizza. I would eat after 7 or 8 o'clock. And I started running at first, and it was hard, man. It was so much extra weight. I had shin splints. It was so much pain. And I couldn't even run like 50 yards without like sounding like I was about to die. But after, trial and error, I started doing P90X at home, and then I started to do the step climber at the gym a lot. And that just tore through calories. I was doing 20 minutes a day at the gym, sometimes 2 sessions if I was feeling good enough. And the weight just started to melt off. There was people that would come up to me after like a month, like you're looking good, man. Like, what are you doing? And I would explain to them what I was doing. And again, if you're noticing a trend here, people inspire you, you inspire people inspire you, and then you inspire people. It's a full circle. And even people at the gym, just total strangers, started to notice, like, my weight loss. And like, I had a lady come up to me one day, and she was just like, I just wanted to let you know, I've seen you in here before. And it's like, you're really looking good. Like, I'm proud of you. And that was the very early stages of people starting to notice me. And I was just like, you're talking to me? Like, I'm just here doing my thing. And, and then it was little stuff like that eventually, led up to my personality today. And sure enough, by July of 2014, hiking day came, and I got down to like 204 from 260. So it was close. It was real close in a short amount of time. I was losing 3 or 4 pounds a week. And after I hiked that first mountain, I successfully summited, and I actually got to share the moment with my father, which was great. And we both summited it. But then, that was my first intro into the hiking world. I saw people like getting water from the stream and like putting like the iodine pills in there and like filtering water. And I'm like, you can do that? I was like, I had like these like jank shoes. I had like 7 water bottles in my backpack, like just so much weight. No idea what I was doing. And it took me like 12 hours to summit, but I got there. But when I got to the top of that summit, I met my first hikers into the hiking world. And I got to chatting with them, and I was in like total strangers were being super nice. And it was, again, starting to scratch that surface to where this world isn't as mean as what I thought it was, in school and, growing up. And when I was like, I just sat there and I reflected on that view, and I was like, I just had this feeling that I'd never felt before. It was this sense of accomplishment, because I felt like I finally accomplished something. It was that pivoting moment where I told myself that, I did this. And I instantly fell in love with hiking, and I'm seeing a view that most won't see their entire life. You can't drive to this view. You got to work for it. And that set the stage for all of my hiking in the future. And then you fast forward, 5 or 6 years, and I climbed every single 14,000 foot peak in Colorado. And it's just, you run out of words to say. You just got to believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, there's nothing that you can't do. And fortunately, I was lucky enough to keep it off for 7 years now. And, like anybody, it fluctuates a little bit during chase season. I'll gain 10, 15 pounds, and I'll lose it again in the summertime when I start hiking and getting back in shape. But the thing is to never lose awareness. There's many successful stories where people lose a bunch of weight, then they gain it all right back. And you know, I've gotten back up over 200 a couple times, but then you can't get discouraged. That's the key with this whole thing, with freelance, pursuing dreams, weight loss. You can't get discouraged even if you lose progress. All you got to do is pick yourself back up, step in the right direction, make that progress back, and just become a little more self-aware and make those little changes.
So let me ask you one more thing here, Aaron. We got to wrap up here shortly. Tell me about your personal goals in 10 years. What do you want to be in 10 years, personally, professionally?
So in 10 years, I want to keep doing my freelance, but I would eventually like to do something full-time, whether that be with a news station or, a weather station, and be like a full-time videographer for somebody. And my long-term goal, as much as I love the nomad life, it's not something I want to do forever. And I would like to be successful in my business enough to be able to have a consistent enough income to afford my own place in hopefully Colorado, because I love it out here so much. And, get to that kind of point in my life to where I can live comfortably with that, because, my whole life is built around seeking discomfort, but, I'm going to get older. My body's going to, start, creaking and cracking every once in a while. So, maybe the living in a Forester in 10 years isn't going to feel quite as comfortable. But you know what though, man, if what it takes is living in my Forester for another 10 years to get to my goal, I'll do it. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing I'd rather be doing than this, and inspiring people. And, if that's what it takes to get there, then I'm going to do whatever it takes. But yeah, 10-year goal, full-time position, videographer, whether that be for a news station, weather station, or, wherever, maybe even just regular news. I want to keep doing stuff with freelance, and I want to keep shooting video, and I want to keep getting noticed all over the world and just inspiring people along the way.
Be interesting to see what the media landscape looks like in 10 years. It will not look like what it looks like right now. So, and again, I think there's some great opportunities, and I think your generation is just brilliant, Aaron. I've said this before, some old farts like me. Yeah, those kids, they're lazy. They're not lazy. The hardest working people I know are your age, and with the most passion in their life, they're your age. And it's so refreshing to see that. So I have great hope for the future, but we've got to start wrapping up here in a second. So Aaron, be thinking of a pick of the week here in a second.
Okay.
We're going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to share a pick of the week. This is related to weather. It can be a website, hardware, software, you name it. So Jen, let's go to you for your Wednesday night special pick of the week.
I am going with the summary we just put out. It's for Barnesville, Georgia. It's the EF3 tornado that occurred April 28th, 2011. Countless hours I worked with Nelson Tucker, another inspiring young person who I agree with you, James. I just so motivated by these kids. They keep me young, and we put a lot of hours into this, and it was a balance between talking about probably the last violent tornado that occurred during the super outbreak. It was a late night tornado, went through middle Georgia. We were able to interview members of the family of the two folks that were killed. And the daughter-in-law wrote a book. And I found her, I bought her book. She stayed in communication with us to give us some insight. And her story was so inspiring. The couple that were killed had adopted a little girl, Chloe. She was only 7, and they were killed. She survived. And the couple's son and his wife, Patty, who wrote the book, they adopted her. So we got to just follow the whole journey. But there were many stories that came together along the entire path that were just truly amazing. And so, folks, please go read this. It's one of our free summaries that we put out. It's not going to be a quick read. It's over 10,000 words. It will be an ebook for you. Nelson put together some amazing graphs and maps with this, and to kind of tell the whole story. And we analyze the damage as well, because it was very violent. But we try to do our best to do a balance. So it's a very meaningful story to me. So please check that out.
Awesome. We'll do it. And again, all the picks of the week will be on the website, weatherbrains.com. Bill Murray, what do you, sir, have for us this evening?
I'm going to take the foghorn just for the fun of it, just so I can hear the foghorn.
I have not blown the foghorn in so long. I have to find
it. Because you're never here for the picks of the week. You're always gone. by the time the picks of the week. And then when we get back on the 28th, James, all of our friend Dr. Harold Brooks is going to join us with Paulina Swick that night. That'll be a show that Dr. Kim McLean Cloco or Kim Cloco McLean, get that right, is in charge of. And I'm excited that Jen has arranged for Bill Curtis, the famous Bill Curtis, to be with us on Monday, July the 19th. And he and his wife are so nice, and I'm so looking forward to that show. So a lot of great guests coming up, but that's just some of the most important ones.
Bill Curtis was the announcer voice guy in the movie Anchorman.
I know. I got to go back and watch it.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Go back and watch Anchorman. Yeah. And he was the narrator of the story of Ron Burgundy. I mean, it's like, wow, that's like
cool.
So you're gonna have to bring out your best Ron Burgundy stuff that night, James.
Yeah, I'll get a toupee and get my red blazer here and white shoes, and I'll go down to the suit store. Yeah.
If you don't actually follow through with that, I'm going to be disappointed.
Yeah, me too.
Scotchity scotch. All right, so my pick of the week is the climatology page from the National Hurricane Center. A lot of people probably don't even know it exists, but it's similar to the Storm Prediction Center WCM page. If you guys have seen that, it's really a treasure trove of historic tornado or not hurricanes and tropical storms. But it's really interesting, and you can spend hours in there looking at things. So again, the National Hurricane Center Tropical Cyclone Climatology page. All right, Aaron, I know you have something really good for us. So go. It's a nugget. It's a gem. It's a gem.
Well, actually, I was going to choose the NHC page with all the previous records of those tornadoes, but one that I'm actually going to suggest is on the Storm Prediction Center page, under the morning analysis or whatever, you can go back and previous years, and those morning soundings I talked about, like it's Pilger, Nebraska tornadoes, you can go back and see all the archived version of those, and it's really cool to kind of compare them to previous tornado events and see what the morning atmosphere is like. And it helps too with those people that are kind of just getting brought up into the meteorology world, because you can see those morning soundings and you can study those, and you can kind of look to see what works for certain days and what didn't work for other days. So it kind of gives you a good intro into into the forecasting world, and using that real-time data for your advantage to potentially storm chase.
Yeah, to me, looking back on previous events, and you look at the soundings, you look at the upper air, the surface stuff, it's fascinating to me, those case studies. And I think looking at events in the past, it's a really valid way of looking at what might happen in the future with the same type setup. So that's awesome. We'll put the link up on the website, weatherbrains.com. Weather Roundup. Let's see, Bill, do we need to talk about Bruce Jones here? I don't think Bruce could join us tonight.
I think you throw up our slide and mention our special that Midland gives for all of our listeners. But we'll have Bruce on for an extra week in July.
Probably need to do that. So let's see here. I was typically have
this point in the show every week. We talk to Bruce Jones from Midland Weather Radio. They've been a great supporter of the show this year, and we appreciate that very much, helping us pay the bills. And so they have a really special offer for all the WeatherBrains listeners out there. Using the promo code SPAN25 will get you 25% off any of their products at midlandusa.com, and free shipping over any order over $100. Not too late to get a belated Father's Day gift, especially that ER210. That's a cool unit. And of course, the WR120 is the backbone of the weather radio receivers out there across the country. That's the one I love, and the one that sits by my bed every night. So as Bruce always tells us, early warning is your best protection, and nothing better than having a NOAA weather radio at your side. And I know you agree with that, James Spann.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm still stunned at the low penetration rate of weather radios in the United States in tornado prone areas. Places like Oklahoma and Alabama, where you'd think every household would have one. It's shocking how many people do not. But like we've talked about, it's totally independent of the cell network. People say, well, I don't get good cell coverage out here where I live. Well, so what? There's a good chance you're going to get really good weather radio reception. The network is excellent where they're, in tornado prone areas. And Again, if you're on the Gulf Coast, Atlantic Coast, it's just a great deal. So again, midlandusa.com, and the promo code is SPAN25. All right, Aaron, plug away. What do you want to plug? Go. Social media, websites. This is your plug segment. Go.
Heck yeah. Basically, if anyone wants to follow any of my pictures or videos, I have every social media page there is out there. Facebook.com/Ohio Storm Chasers. It's Facebook.com/Ohio Storm Chasers. And I also have Twitter. It's at Aaron Rigsby, just my name with OSC at the end. So Aaron Rigsby, OSC. I usually post more frequently there during chases than I do on my Facebook page. And then for all of my picture highlights, you can follow me on Instagram as well. And it's just my name, Aaron Rigsby. And that's where you can see all the action and all the behind the scenes stuff on my Instagram stories with the hiking and the chasing and, me being goofy with my friends and just enjoying life.
And the big question is, are you on TikTok?
I am not yet. I refuse. I don't like TikTok. My friends have tried so hard to get me on there. I refuse.
I can't say I really don't blame you, but we got to wrap this one up. Aaron, it's just great. You've become quite a legend, and you've got a great attitude and a great heart. So thanks for taking the time to be on the show this week. It is an honor having you here. Thank you so much. Hope you come back soon.
Yeah, it's an honor to have. It's an honor to be on here listening to you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So the deal is
we're seeing a TED Talk very soon. Aaron,
TED Talk. So typically, WeatherBrains is produced on Monday nights at 8:00 Central, 9:00 Eastern. This is a Wednesday night special. But anyway, we know most of you listen. And if you do listen, we thank you for that. If you watch, we thank you as well. If you want to get in touch with us, our email address, it's email@weatherbrains.com. We'll have Aubrey back next show for an email segment. But show notes, weatherbrains.com, picks of the week, all of that is there. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless.
Thanks, Aaron. Awesome show.
Aaron, you were awesome, man.
It was great.
show.
Let me know when you're back in Marysville, please.
Absolutely.